Morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning, Tommy. How you doing?
Good morning, Mike. How you? It's going to be a good one.
You changed your sentence halfway through there.
I wasn't sure, so
I'm
I
changing
was
my
like,
mind mid-sentence.
I realized that we were live Thursday because this Tuesday is the beginning of the week. I was going to say it's so good to be back live, even though we just did that Thursday.
Monday. We
No, that
recorded
was a
one on Monday.
recording. We had a
Yes.
live one on Thursday.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, now I follow
Right?
you.
I
It's
got
early morning
yeah.
math logic. It doesn't quite sit right now, so we're going to figure it out. All right, today's topic is we're going to unpack one of the Michael's most exciting features. We've been talking about this since the beginning of the podcast. We're going to talk about semantic modeling on the web, what you can do using semantic models on the web. How does that feature work? That has recently been announced as generally available. So we're going to unpack that feature. And then before we get to that, let's do some news. Tommy, you've got a couple of really interesting news articles here. What do you got for us?
Yes, we do. So the first one we have is said deprecating Power BI Q&A. So in December this month, the Power BI Q&A feature, the legacy natural language tool, will be deprecated, and instead taking its place is Power BI Copilot. Q&A visuals, all those will stop functioning. So doing any Q&A in dashboards, mobile apps, embedded scenarios will stop functioning after retirement. It's obviously the overlap. I still use the dashboard in a day training, and I still have a one saying, hey, this is AI before AI features that Power BI built out of the box. So this makes a lot of sense. The Q&A setup tools are also going to be retired. So unfortunately, some of your Power BI tips products are going to no longer be relevant.
So this one is going to be in December 2025 is the deprecation announcement. And then December 2026 is the official retirement, no new creation of any experiences, and existing Q&A visuals will no longer be available. So that you have some ample time to kind of remove the Q&A visual from your reports, but just be aware it's happening now. You've got about a year or so to start removing it from your reports. Don't use it anymore. You won't be able to make new ones, and then you'll need to start removing them from existing reports as well. I feel like this is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I mean, Tommy, you use it. It's in your demos. I mean,
in the demo, yes.
When you look at an organization, like all the reports they have, what would you say? How many reports do you think would have this in this?
Honestly, we tried multiple times in multiple departments and multiple companies. I've tried really to push for the Q&A feature and those advanced visuals.
Yep.
What we did in Workspace is we actually created an audience and a tab, but that was basically like, hey, experiment with our main reports here with some of the advanced features for people to try it rather than taking the place of the report.
Yeah.
So that way people could actually go, hey, I actually want to look at our sales dashboard, but I want to do with the QA and the, the decision tree, obviously not to take the place of report, but they really never caught on because it just was not a thing. We tried adding a drill through, but it became more confusing than it should.
I would agree with that one too, Tommy. It adds value, but I don't think it adds that much value. I don't think it was more confusing than it was actually useful. So I think this is kind of makes sense why they're deprecating it and they're moving on. I think I will argue that the Copilot experience, when talking with Copilot about your data, it does seem to resolve more rich insights, better experiences. There's a dedicated Copilot home that allows you to chat with the data. I kind of favor that experience more in general than just the Q&A visual. So
yeah,
be aware that's being deprecated. Second topic here, we've got unlocking enterprise AI with seamless integration with OneLake files and Microsoft Foundry knowledge. This is kind of like a mouthful. What a title on this one, Tommy. What's this one all about?
So now OneLake files can now directly be integrated into Microsoft Foundry knowledge, Foundry IQ, not to be confused with Fabric IQ, is kind of built off of your normal Azure Foundry. So there are a lot of overlapping of names, but simply what you're allowed to do is take your Azure AI search and Azure AI information, bring it over, integration with both OneLake files and those via shortcuts. So Basically, it's an integration allowing AI agents to ground themselves on the same data, powering Fabric and also what you're doing in OneDrive.
So this is kind of like a reverse feature here a little bit, right, Tommy? So this
Yeah,
is a feature of AI Foundry where we're now exposing the One Lake experiences or getting access to those elements in AI Foundry, but from your data platform, which makes sense, right? You're going
right.
to be building data, you're going to collect information, put it inside of the One Lake experience. That way, your reporting can use it, and now you can then share that same um, folder files. This makes sense. It's just blob storage, anyways, but you can share that back to the AI Foundry, which is not a Power BI feature or Fabric feature. It's a separate, Azure installed portal that you use to
Right.
build AI things.
So yeah, this is going to be great because we've already known there's a connection in Azure AI Foundry for Fabric, but it was still a bit limited. So this is going to be important for that hard data and especially indexing data, creating that connection, and basically being able to do all of your basically using it as a knowledge source.
This
So
this is one area that I'm a little bit confused. Not confused. I feel like this feature. Gentlemen, let me step back here. Let's just talk about AI Foundry. I feel AI Foundry. I understand that it comes from the Azure portal. I understand that it exists, kind of on its own, and then you supply data to it. Those things I understand. But this feels to me a lot like Synapse. You build this really big, complex outside of Fabric and Power BI system thing, and it gets some usage. But to me, the power of going after all the data and the One Lake story is bring AI Foundry as an item directly in your Fabric workspace, and just allow me to bill it not through Fabric CU usage, but if you're building an AI Foundry, just give me the auto scale compute just like Spark has. Let
right.
me bill Azure, put, hey, this is going to be an item you're going to put in your Fabric workspace. We're going to bill you via your Azure subscription the same way we do with Spark with auto scaling, but land the whole tool. Like there's no reason why you can't drop in the entire AI Foundry right inside Fabric. I mean, I think that's how I feel it would be more effective. So I feel like this is one of these use cases where they're doing a very similar experience of like trying to build something in Fabric, but it's closely related, but it's not actually in it. I don't think you're
Yes.
going to get the adoption you want unless you build the actual product inside Fabric.
I completely agree. And again, Azure AI Foundry is for everything that is your advanced AI tool. It's going to be interesting, Mike, with Fabric IQ and the intelligence platform. If you're going to start seeing the kind of almost that overlap or blending and mixing where they almost become the same product. Now, Azure AI Foundry has a lot. It's really based on the models. It's model focused.
Totally agree. But that's also, I think, my argument too, Tommy, is the argument is AI Foundry has this great rich layer of all these models you can get your hands on, and you can use them and build AI experiences around them. What I'm lacking with the AI Foundry is there doesn't really seem to be a very easy way of like triggering it or having it get started, or
Mhm.
I need to do something with data beforehand and then use the AI Foundry as a node on a pipeline of nodes that helps me do the AI piece that I need it to do. So this is where I feel things are a little bit lacking. Like I feel like I like AI Foundry, but it doesn't quite fit into the workload flow that I'm doing as I think it should. And maybe I'm just missing it at this point. Maybe there's going to be a lightweight AI Foundry consume agents experience that we're going to get eventually. But right now, it doesn't really feel like it still feels like a separate product. I need it to feel more in line with my existing product. Why can't, I would like
I
to,
would completely agree.
right?
Yeah, I
So,
would
anyways,
completely agree.
I'm not sure I'm quite sold on this integration yet, but it's out there. I do think it's a good idea to have one storage place for your data, all the data storage in one lake, and then you can use it in both places, either Fabric or now in AI Foundry. So that part I am excited about. All right, last topic, Tommy. What's the last one you've got for us?
And the last one we have is turning everyday documents from SharePoint to OneDrive. I said OneDrive before, I was getting one link messed up, but this is about OneDrive and SharePoint into analytics ready data with OneLake shortcuts. So what is this? It basically allows OneLake to use shortcuts to connect and um, reference SharePoint and OneDrive files without copying or moving the data. This includes Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, PDFs. Files remain in their original locations, but appear as part of the OneLake storage. And it's really pretty amazing because it can synchronize. It's not copying and moving. You can use that data, such as Excel forecast, transactional data with the new PDF features.
Yep.
And it's simply just right clicking in a lake house folder and selecting a new shortcut.
So this, I think, makes a lot more sense. Like, so being able to provide shortcuts to things, really neat here. Um, Again, Tommy, going back to like, where do we want to store things that we actively work on?
Mhm.
This makes a lot of sense for it. That's that Excel document where we're putting budget numbers down and we want to be able to read that file or pull it into something that's related to Fabric or running it in a pipeline. Well, now I don't have to go do all the magical,
Right.
like, copy the file over, make sure it stays synchronized. Like, you can just keep the file in SharePoint where it should stay. SharePoint already has versioning on top of things, and you just point to it. And then it just, whenever you need to use the file, it just shows up. That's one of the big things, Tommy, I think I've had a lot of problems with. Copying data from SharePoint and getting it into Fabric has been quite a pain over the time. You really can only, let me say it this way. You can use a pipeline to do it, but it's a lot more complex. The easiest way to get data from SharePoint to Fabric or OneLake or like in experiences in Power BI has traditionally been data flows. So data
Mhm.
flows, it seems to be the easiest. You can sign in, you can see a list of files, you can get the files in, but then you have to import them to the semantic model immediately or drop them, make copies of them. That doesn't make sense. Now this gets rid of all that. So I think of all the features, Tommy, I don't love having a bunch of things stored in SharePoint. It's not my favorite anymore. I like it all in Fabric now.
I
But
know.
of the features, I think this is probably one of the best recently new features that are going to make people have a lot easier, make it easier for people to get data to Fabric. I think this is gonna remove
1,000%.
a lot of friction.
And honestly, though, too, I've been working with some Copilot teams, and the biggest thing is like, hey, I know you do Fabric, but we would really, really, really like to know what's going on with all the other data at the organization, which is
Yeah.
where the biggest focus is.
Yes, that makes
So,
total sense.
huge thing.
So anyways, I like these 3 articles. I think of the 3 that are the most impactful for me, Tommy, I didn't really use Q&A before. I really didn't recommend it, so it's not too much of a big thing. I'm really liking this SharePoint and OneDrive shortcutting. I think this makes a lot of sense and will actually make it easier for us to get data into Fabric and use or operate on business data that we can regularly get in and adjust and manipulate. So I think that's gonna be very useful. All right, any other news items? I don't think we have any other news pieces.
No, I think that's good. We got a lot to talk about, my friend.
All right. Well, let's go through our main topic today, and we'll jump in here. We have a caller today, so let's bring in our caller today. Uh, Hello, Emily, and welcome to the show. Emily is a PM from Microsoft. She is in charge of this newly released feature. We're actually going GA. It's been out for a while. We're going GA with modeling for the web. Emily, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I know it's early where you are. Thank you for getting up a little extra early this morning and jumping on the podcast. We do appreciate that. So let's unpack this a little bit. Emily, what is modeling for web? And we
Mhm.
just went GA. This is a big announcement. We're now officially live. Give us a quick high level overview. Like, what happened here? What are we looking at that we're going to be able to use now in PowerBI.com?
Awesome. Yeah, we are so excited to share that web modeling is now GA as of September. So, super excited about that.
Awesome.
And yeah, what we're really looking to do with allowing users to edit their semantic models in the web is really just give an extra surface area
Mhm.
to make changes to your semantic model. So historically, this was always just done in the model view in Power BI Desktop. We
Yes.
heard from so many people, especially Mac users, that it's really hard to use Power BI Desktop for every single one of the changes they want to make. And so they
Mhm.
just want more flexibility, and that's really what we're looking to do with the web is bring that functional parity of modeling changes that were previously only supported in Power BI Desktop, allowing them to be made in the web to make things easier, especially for Mac users, users who just prefer to use the web for making changes, and even things just like quick changes without having to like launch desktop, make the change, save, republish for just small changes here and there. So just really the goal is maximum flexibility with having these capabilities supported in an additional surface area.
So you're saying quick changes. I've definitely done this a handful of times, and I absolutely love this. a measure needs to be added. It's a simple like sum or some kind of aggregation. I need to, oh shoot, or maybe I didn't hide a column that I should have hidden, or the column is set to auto aggregation, right? And I wanted to turn it off. Like it doesn't need to have auto aggregation. I've already got a measure, and potentially I want to rearrange a couple measures and columns and put them into folders. All very doable, very simple level things, but you have to spin up all of desktop. You got to go download the file, get it down from where it is. And one of the things here, Emily, that I think is a hidden feature of this, but was a major unblock for individuals. One of the major deterrents, I would say, for building anything on the web was the ability, when you edited things in the web, it got locked there. So, for example, certain features of models or certain features of reporting, even the reports for that matter, if you edited the report, you were unable to download it. And so our initial guidance, Tommy, was always, no, don't ever edit on the web because you can't,
Right.
you may accidentally do something where it gets locked in the web and you can never download it again. I think modeling for web really resolves, maybe resolves a better word, resolves this need. Right now you can edit anything on the web and there's almost nothing you can do that will block you from at least downloading the model, right? That was kind of a needed requirement to complete before we could actually make GA of modeling on the web. Is that kind of a correct statement there, Emily?
Yeah, I think that was one of our core goals, is to allow users who are making changes in the web to still like bring it back to desktop, make changes in desktop, republish in the web, allow using both surface areas, not one or the other, and even going like one step further, like XMLA edited models as well. That was also something, maybe in the initial preview, that you noticed that first we didn't allow you to open and edit XMLA edited models in the web. That was something we really prioritized kind of early in the public preview. Like, we want you to have maximum flexibility so you can edit the same model in desktop, use your like third-party tooling with XMLA edits, and edit in the web and seamlessly go between all of these different surface areas on your same exact semantic model.
That feels like the holy grail to me. Like it shouldn't, and I think that's probably like, I'm going to use the Microsoft term, that has probably been the North Star. And I'm happy that we've really gotten here, because I think this is a big moment, honestly. The fact that you can now edit with Tabular Editor or other tools that you have, you can then Measure Killer, whatever the external tool is, you can use them to manipulate the model directly with the XML endpoint. Basically use an API to talk to the model, but then it doesn't lock you out of any other features. One other feature here is this part of the going GA as well, Emily, which is you can edit existing models in the web from desktop. Is that kind of what you're also alluding to here as well? Like I can edit the model with desktop, but connecting to a remote model that's in the service. Is that part of modeling for web, or is that kind of a feature unblock that you needed there?
Yeah, so I'd say that was like a similar but slightly different feature that we also announced GA at FabCon in September, is the live editing of direct link semantic models in Power BI Desktop. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a similar feature. It's almost kind of the flip, where with editing semantic models in the web, we were working to bring like that core model view capability from desktop to the web. Kind of the reverse of that, which is similar, is direct link models. At least that first release was really web only editing, but we know so many of our Power BI users love desktop, and we wanted to bring the desktop model view experience for direct link models. So with that, we brought in the live editing feature that you're talking about, where you can live edit your direct link models, which are stored in the web, so it's still in Fabric, but make changes to them using the desktop experience that many of you know and love. So that's something we also announced at FabCon, including support for composite models. So having import tables and direct link tables within the same model. And that can also be edited both in the live editing experience in desktop as well as the web editing experience.
I think it would be important at this point. I know we said the biggest thing is the Mac users rejoice, but obviously there's amazing features here. And for Mike and I, we've been talking about this forever, but why is this so much more than just a bigger deal than just Mac users have access now to the web? What was the origin of the focus? Mike, actually, you may not know this, but our first episode ever, about 4 years ago, Mike's like, hey, what are we going to talk about? He's like, let's talk about modeling on the web. I'm like, it's not actually anything that's out at all. So why? He's like, well, we're going to get there. And sure enough, the drum beats soon
4
true.
years later,
and
we've got GA.
yeah.
We got there eventually.
Yeah.
We saw where the focus is. We saw where the focus is, the updates, and obviously desktop's trying to keep up with all the updates. So why was this kind of an origin for your team and for Microsoft to say, no, we need to push this? This is an essential part of the workflow and for Power BI developers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was for a lot of reasons. Like we talked about, supporting Mac users was honestly a really big one. Just having some kind of Mac story for that, not only just modeling, but having the end-to-end creation flow in the web. Because now you can like not only edit existing models, but create net new ones and bring in new data sources for your reports. So that story was a really big one. Giving more flexibility and parity between surface areas is another one. And especially like for really large models, sometimes it is best and easiest to have that stored in the web in live edit based off of having it stored in the cloud.
I think this is the story here. I mean, so Tommy, I understand, like, Mac users, yes, we like them. One thing I've been doing, I really like Macs. I have an iPhone. I'm a Mac user kind of through and through. And one of the main reasons I built a company and my consulting firm, we all have Windows computers. And for the pure reason of we need Power BI Desktop to do all the editing of things. When you look at the lens of, this is where I was maybe reading between the lines here about what Microsoft was doing a bit, was when you look at like pipelines. I don't run a pipeline on my desktop. I don't run the Azure functions or the Fabric functions. I don't run notebooks. I mean, I could run notebooks locally on my machine, but everything seems to be built like on top of service-based things. It's all inside of Fabric, and you're using them in the web. And I thought to myself, the only experience here that really doesn't really align with these other experiences is desktop and modeling. That's the only experience we didn't actually fully have parity between. Tommy, I know you've done this before, but when we work in desktop, there's this kind of a multi-screen effect. I remember early on, I don't know, Emily, if you've heard this, I'm sure you've heard this request many, many times. Everyone asks for, man, it'd be really nice in desktop if I could pop out multiple windows of like the report, the model, the Power Query. So we get this experience now today in desktop where you can pop out Power Query, transform your data, and you get a whole window of just transforming data. You can make changes there, and you can hit change and update. And what it will do is the visual, the report, and the model side will then update with the changes to the data. Well, we had really no way to have the report up and the model up at the same time. This is a feature that I think is unlocked now with modeling for web. So Tommy, what I do a lot is I'll have data engineering stuff, pipelines, notebooks, or things open in one browser window. I'll have a separate browser window for the model part, and then I'll have a third browser window open for the report. And now I can dedicate each window to an experience that I need to modify things in. And a lot of times, I don't know how your design flow works, Emily, or Tommy, yours either. Maybe you can speak to how you design flow. I'll build a lot of basic things in the model, sums of columns, maybe some averages, group some things, put them in folders. And then I go build visuals, because then I need to play this back and forth game where I build some things and figure out, oh, I need another measure. I build some things, oh, I need another measure. I build some things, oh, I need to reshape the data a little bit, and then make a measure, and then put it back in the visual. So we're playing this data game where we're constantly like reshaping the data just slightly to get what we want. And there's a lot of what I'll call fast iterations between the report building and the modeling, and the report building and the modeling. And I think for me, my workflow is having those two experiences side by side, where I can easily make changes to measures and go right into editing the report. That works for me. So let me kick it over to you, Tommy. What do you think about that? Do you use this? Do you use 3 different windows? How do you build?
No, honestly though, I'm still kind of old style, especially when it comes to using my tabular editor, and honestly a cursor and an IDE. So when it comes to the web, Mike, especially, like I'm going back and forth. It is pretty great to do the DAX query view, but for me, Mike, unless I'm doing a report change, I'm still hesitant with the semantic model on the web. Not because I don't trust it. Granted, I do have fat fingers, and I do know Control W will close your browser. But honestly, we know we have great experiences from a developer point of view. However, there have been a few quick things I've created in the web where really nothing was created on desktop, which is, I think,
Yep.
the part with Fabric especially is like, oh, I don't have to do anything. And
Yep.
yeah, like my demo that I do, the GitHub stars report, nothing on there was created on desktop. And it was like, this is actually pretty neat. But from browser point of view, I did try using the Fabric tabs, too, the Fabric experience. But no, I have I have 5 screens in my office. I'm going to use them.
So I think you bring up a really interesting point here, and I think, Emily, this is another part we can kind of start unpacking here slightly. Is who is this for? I mean, it's definitely for every user who does modeling, and we just kind of talked about like some simple changes, some starting points for things. DAX Query View also is in modeling for web, so we can also use DAX Query View to write DAX statements, or use Copilot to help us write DAX statements directly inside the model. We don't technically have Timdal View, not technically. We don't have Timdal View in the web. I'm not gonna push you here, Emily, on this one feature, but I would imagine if I put my thinking cap on here, right? If we've already got the model view, the DAX query view, I had to imagine Timdal view is not far behind here in the future. It kind of makes sense to have that parity between what desktop is doing and what the web is doing. So I'm not gonna push you on the feature, but I hope, fingers crossed, that Timdal view also appears in the web. But I think, Tommy, you bring up the good point. I'm gonna go back to just who is this for? And I think I would argue, Tommy, if you're a newer user to Power BI or modeling or just getting your feet wet, I think modeling for web is really good in that newer developer experience. Tommy, you're on the very end of that spectrum, which is super pro developer. You're using large language models to build your model. You're using a tabular editor to automate and write C# scripts against the model, which you can do still with the XML endpoint. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's no scripting in modeling for web. You can't automate.
Yeah.
Hey, create for me, all these repeatable steps over and over again. So that's not there today. Let me just pause there, Emily. What are your reaction to this? Is this kind of where you feel like it's that newer to intermediate level developer who would maybe want to use this?
Yeah, and I think that all of that is fair point, and like good call outs. Like we don't have Timdal view in web modeling today. I'm not going to say any more details there, but I'm a huge fan of Timdal view, but it is not in the web today. So I think that kind of like that intermediate beginner user, like I think that's where they're going to see a lot of value in web modeling today. But it is our goal to have that parity experience between surface areas and to just support web modeling as another place to make changes to models in a really similar experience as what you have in desktop model view, really for any users who are using modeling. So a lot of those like really rich, more developer focused experiences that you might be familiar with in third-party tooling or in desktop, like it is our goal to also just support editing scenarios for users who use those kind of experiences as well. And that's a big reason why we supported like the XML edited models, being able to open and edit them in the web is just to give flexibility for users who kind of hop between all these different ways to edit their model and give that extra place to make changes as well.
So one interesting thought here, and again, this is just, I'm thinking this as we speak here. Emily, you're talking about like, the XMLA support is essential for hooking on these other tools. One thing that I find interesting here is, Tommy, you like using MCPs. Tommy, you also like using tabular editor. Today, it's not a limitation of maybe Power BI or Fabric at this point, because there is the XML endpoint. You can talk to those endpoints and use them through these other tools. But today, there is no MCP for web experience. There's not. I can't go to Fabric and say turn on the MCP server and then it just runs inside the browser window. That doesn't exist. Another one, Tommy, like there's no tabular editor in as a component, as a workload that shows up inside Fabric. So this is one area. Okay, I'm going to go on a tangent, a riff here. I do think in some way we're somewhat limited to what we can do in the web or with Fabric because of the companies that are building these tools. Some companies are building tools that are actually existing. So our theme generator that we built for building themes and features, we built it on the web. That was the only way you could go get it. You could use it only in the web, and you would download things and use it from there. Well, because we were already a web-based tool, we were able to move the theme generator over to Fabric called Power Designer, which now does theming and templates and page development. Like all of that can now exist inside the service. And so as a developer, I'm going to put my developer cap on here for a bit. There is nothing that I can build as a developer. I don't have the ability of making my own MCP server as a developer inside Fabric at this point. There's nothing there that lets me do that. I can't use AI Foundry as part of a Fabric deployable item yet. It's a separate item that I have to go deploy in Azure. So me as a developer building solutions on top of Power BI and Power BI related things, we just don't physically have the ability to move our tools, the tooling, the advanced tooling into Fabric at this point. I'm not saying it's not going to get there. I'd really like to encourage Tabular Editor to come up with a version that Tabular Editor runs inside the browser window where we could run that. I mean, DAX Studio would be really cool to have that inside as a workload also in Fabric. So there's all these really rich ALM toolkit. But another one, why can't that be part of the service? Like, why can't that just exist there? So I think there's an opportunity here. I'm not sure how many people or organizations or companies are thinking that direction, moving that way. I will say this, as a person who develops workloads for Fabric, they're not really visible. There's a lot of barriers to entry for those users to get started. So even though we have tools that are there, most of our usage still comes from our website, right? That's where most of the usage of our tools come from. We're not quite there yet on the Fabric space. So we're definitely trying to add a lot more features directly in Fabric to make sure people like love the experience of working in Fabric with our tools directly inside Fabric. So I think this is an area that's relatively unexplored. And Emily, as I think this is an unlock feature, as I see this happening, that will enable a lot more comfort with people building more advanced tooling inside the web that will go back to the models. What do you think, Emily? Is that what you see too? Tommy, your impression? Sorry, I picked both people. Emily, you go first. Sorry, I don't know what to say. Sorry, Emily, you go first.
Yeah. So I think that having like the web experiences does unlock potential for a lot of different integrations. And I think one thing kind of that came to mind for me when you're talking through this is things like different MCP server type experiences. And while it might not necessarily like live natively in the web, it is a goal of ours to support web edited models to still be edited and called from different surface areas, such as MCP servers. Like, I don't know if you've had a chance to try out the modeling MCP server that was recently released.
And I was couple things around. I did try that one out. That just recently got released at FabCon Vienna. That's the September release there. Rui, I think it was Rui who was putting that one out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Rui put this one out. Have played with it. Very impressed. And it worked really well with, like, I was doing it on desktop files. Now I didn't test it. And Emily, I think you're alluding to that same MCP thing could talk to the XML endpoint as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So you also could use it for your models in like the service in the web.
Yeah.
So awesome. That I think is kind of another way where we're just trying to give maximum flexibility. Like you can edit your model on the web and then you can hop into the MCP server that you kind of set up in VS Code and make changes there. So it's really like a flexibility thing. While maybe the MCP server experience isn't directly in the web right now, like you could still at least have different options for the same model.
I like that. Tommy, what do you think? I mean, you're kind of more the MCP man, the large language model, the Claude guy. What do you think, Tommy? How does this fit?
But here's the thing, though, and I'm going to go back to what you said because I really want to be enlightened on the kind of the default way that Microsoft's going to recommend, because obviously there's a lot of work to build desktop and there's a lot of work to build service and the web and the features kind of thing. I know that it looks the same, but I'm pretty sure it's different code and it's different teams that are working on this. So as I look at the implementation guide and the Power BI adoption, is Microsoft going to have a recommended, like, if I'm just getting started with a BI team on, hey, I can, let's use semantic modeling on the web. Like that's kind of the default way. And if you're, really need to get into the weeds, then you download desktop. I think this is the big thing that when I'm looking at my clients, when I'm looking at even just people when they ask like, hey, where should I focus my time and what skills? Mike's been saying desktop's been going away the dinosaurs for 4 years, and we are getting Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just saying there's other experiences that are going to be enriched. Like, so it's not that desktop is being diminished. I think that other experiences are rising up to the level of desktop. I'm not saying desktop is going to ever disappear. And Microsoft has very directly said, I've asked a number of people, Tommy, they
No, I
very
know,
clearly
I know,
said
I
desktop's
know.
not going away. We're not killing desktop like Power Apps.
So but Mike, I think I forgot about the filter pane 3 years ago, so I'll rib you a little. But Emily, for the focus on the semantic model on the web and the amount of features here available with the version history, which is again kind of only available on desktop if you're using Git or OneDrive. The major focus is this a ad hoc temporary you need to do this, or should workflows be built around the semantic modeling on the web?
Yeah. So I would say it's there for both the ad hoc workflows and also building semantic models on the web. That's even why we supported the create from scratch kind of scenario of in the create page in the web, you now can create entirely new semantic models and new reports off of the like 100+ Power Query, Power Query connectors that are supported. So we're allowing you to create entirely end to end in the web. That being said, desktop is here to stay. We have no intentions of getting rid of desktop. We're really like just trying to give another place to let users just kind of decide where they want to do their workflows. It's really about empowering web users to be able to do those end-to-end authoring scenarios that historically were only available in desktop, but still giving the choice and flexibility moving between web and desktop. Just meeting like your need and where you want to develop different pieces along the way.
There's a number of, so we talked a lot about the feature, what you can do there. Let me give you one little gotcha that I was seeing when I used the tool. And this is not a diss on the tool. It's just more of like something as you're using modeling for web. There is it on by default now, Emily? Like when you go to the workspace, again, I have so many workspaces. There's a workspace setting that you need to turn on to allow for modeling for web. Is that on by default now? I can't remember.
That is both on by default now and does not exist anymore because now that
Okay.
we are GA, we removed it. So that was
Okay.
actually a preview setting that we set on the workspace
Awesome.
to toggle on the preview. So that no longer exists. It is on by default.
Good.
Yes.
Good to know that. So I'm going to call that out because that was something that was an initial gotcha when I looked at it. You would go into any model and the modeling for web option in the workspace was not turned on. Therefore, it was grayed out. And you had like people were like, what happened? Why can't I do anything? So that was one feature that has now been removed, now going to JA. So that was one gotcha gone. Easy to fix now. The other one is when you go into the model. So as soon as you click into the model, you're editing it now. You can look at all the model, but a lot of the buttons are grayed out initially. And that's because there is a toggle between view and edit. And I think this is a mental difference that I had to get my head around. When I'm on the web, I could just view the model because you don't necessarily want to make changes to it. So I think this is a very wise feature. I'm glad we have it. And then you go to the upper right-hand corner of the screen and you toggle from viewing to editing. And then you're now be able to make changes. And I think this makes sense because you don't want to go in there and accidentally delete a table or look around or just try to explore what's going on without having to like, I don't really need to edit. I just want to look at things. So I think this is a good feature, but you have to be mindful of if you're going into the models, they won't do anything until you click on the edit button, toggle it, and then now you're able to edit it. So I want to call that out. Tommy, you also mentioned versions. And so this is another probably contentious part of this whole system as well. So I believe also there is versioning inside Edit for Web as well. And so another big difference that we're looking at here is when we think about, let's talk about the developer mindset here a little bit, right? In our desktop experience, we have two copies of the model always, right? We have one that's copied out in the service, and then in the desktop, we would then download a version of the file, make the changes we want, and then we would publish them back up. This new mentality of having the model in the web, and when we're editing a web-based model directly in desktop, you're making live changes back against the real model. Same thing for edit on web. Anytime you make a change, you make the change, it then immediately synchronizes that change back to the model that's in the service. So this is one I think you have to do it that way. this maybe introduces some challenge around what happens when Tommy and Mike both edit the same model on the web. Kind of last change in wins a little bit here. So let me shelf that part of the conversation because we need to unpack that a little bit. But this idea of the model is consistently changing with every single adjustment that you do. Emily, there is a version history, but it's not really long. It's only short, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we do have, because this was a major area of concern that we've heard really across all parts of the release of web
Yes.
modeling
Yeah.
was the case of multiple authors, especially editing
Sure.
the same model, maybe making unintended changes. And like there's so many downstream items that could be connected, like so many different
Yes.
reports could be connected to the same model that making an unintended change could have pretty dramatic consequences and wanting some fail-safe mechanisms in that case if unintended changes were to happen.
Yep.
And so because of that, that's why we introduced semantic model version history, which is really targeted just to help recover from the most critical mistakes that could be made across sessions. So that's why you see there are a lot of limitations for it. Please check out documentation for the fullest of them, but most notably is you get 5 versions per semantic model. We auto capture some during really big change moments, such as when you publish from desktop, when you open the model for a new editing session and there's changes not saved from a previous version. And you could also manually save these versions. But the intended idea of semantic model version history is to allow for recovery from those most critical mistakes where, say, maybe like there's both of you editing, one of you accidentally deletes like a table, having a way to recover that so your reports get back into a functioning state. If you do want to have more of the rich source control experience and go kind of beyond the 5 versions that are out of the box as like an absolute fail-safe, or maybe you didn't set up Git for your workspace, but still use these models, like the best solution for rich source control is using Git in those cases. But this is really a fail-safe for users who maybe aren't familiar with source control or didn't set it up yet, but still want to feel comfortable editing their models in the web.
So, Tommy, I want to kind of unpack this one, this idea of versioning. So, like, it's not. Again, I want to be very clear. The 5 versions of model is just like a catch-all kind of thing. Proper versioning is going back to like taking your workspace and attaching it to Git or CI/CD. So, I'm a huge believer. I really, really enjoy the Git integration, and I really like using DevOps or GitHub to synchronize those changes. I would argue really strongly against making any edits on web for either reports or semantic models without having that turned on. I think you're like, for me, word to the wise of people from when I've screwed things up, right? I highly recommend first, before you start thinking about teaching your team member about edit to web, teaching them how to edit reports in the service directly, make sure you're at least working through the very simple part of, look, we're going to turn on Git integration, and it will show you committed and uncommitted items in the workspace. And that way you can at least understand if it has the green checkbox, it's been synchronized. We're good to go. Like that way the changes are there.
Yeah.
So I would highly, highly recommend that is like almost an essential feature for anything editing in web, is what I would argue. Tommy, what do you think?
No, I 1,000%. I think this is, Mike, does this fall in our category of easy UI, but complicated backend? So Mike and I like to,
I do.
Yeah. So Mike and I like to look at some of the features that come out, and we do love that the user interface for some very complex products is made simple. Like, hey, all I have to do to create a warehouse is just set these things. Don't worry about schemas or all the backend things that DBAs have done. And I think the same thing with version history is like, oh, I just can take a look at it. And one of those things, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily look at the limitations and the considerations about, are you doing this with the large semantic model, which can do some issues there. I think the biggest thing is when we look at some of the version history things, it seems like everything's trying to be as easy as possible. I can go in. It's almost like it just works, right? Because there's really not a lot of configuration with the version history.
Yes.
I
do like that part.
Yeah. How does this fit with Git? Since obviously this would still work with Git, but how is this in a sense aligned with Git? Where is this more because really the world is going more to the web and the browser and web apps, that, you know what, we can do version history in the Power BI, platform in our playground, but it can also work with Git too. Um, how much of the consideration was kind of dealing with Git with this as well?
Yeah. So you can have Git on the same model and Git set up on the same model as semantic model version history. And like kind of like what you're saying, semantic model version history is configured kind of out of the box for you without needing to do anything the
Mhm.
first time you edit a semantic model on the web. So I think that kind of the mindset here is like that is an absolute fail-safe given to you out of the box if you didn't set up Git. But if you did set up Git, like you can have Git and still have your versions on the same model, but we do expect that if you have Git set up, like that's really the more sophisticated source control mechanism that we really strongly encourage, especially for your production ready models. Version history is really just an additional failsafe, especially because we have like a wide variety of users, many of which aren't yet there with setting up Git and source control for their models. And we still want to give some failsafe mechanism for those users that don't have source control set up quite yet, for them to still be able to edit their semantic models in the web. So they live in tandem, but I would say, and it's even in our documentation, that if you want more than 5 versions, if you want rich source control, we do recommend you set up Git.
Okay.
I think that's a very good best practice, and I would definitely double down on that one as well. Um, there's a handful of limitations here that's kind of want to go over here as well. So I know we're getting kind of closer to the end of time here. So love the feature, Emily. Very happy that you're announcing this. I think this opens up a new world for a lot of new developers. It makes it a lot easier for people to get integrated. I definitely feel like from this conversation, one of our main takeaways is make sure you're checking out CI/CD for workspaces. I think this is a feature that everyone should be turning on. I think we're getting in the early days of that. There was some like bugs. It was kind of weird. We're in this for like a year or so plus on Git integration. I really feel like it's at the point where I feel comfortable checking stuff in. It's been reliable for me. I've had a couple edge cases where some things get changed weird, but I've been able to recover. So I feel in general we're pretty stable when it comes to Git integration, and that's something that should be definitely turned on when we're editing in the web. Let's transition over to some unsupported versions of semantic models. I'm going to rattle off just a couple of features here from the documentation, and also I will make sure I put the documentation clearly in the transforms edit service edit data models. You can see that here in the chat window. So if you want to read more about limitations, this is here. You can check it out. I'll just call these out as well. So a couple of the features here are if your models have an incremental refresh, that is one area where you're going to have to be cautious about it because it won't let you edit those things. Makes sense. There's partitions, there's other things in there. I see it being a limitation now. Again, Emily, I'm going to just poke here a bit. It seems like a fair limitation for now, but incremental refresh is just partitioning and some extra features behind the scenes. It feels like that could be something that could be easily unblocked in the future with a new dialog box that helps you manage the loading of the tables. So I'm going to kind of rib you there a little bit. Maybe this is coming at some point.
Yeah, so I would say a few things here. One, thank you so much for including the link to our documentation. I think that's the best place to see limitations. And we
Yes,
have different
100%.
sections such as unsupported semantic models. So models
Yep.
where like you can't open the web. Incremental refresh, I do think, is probably the most important one to be aware
Yes,
of. That models
I
with
would agree.
incremental refresh can't be opened in the web today.
Yep.
I
Oh,
will
I like where you
emphasize
said
today.
that. I like how you said that.
So please stay tuned in our blogs. This one
Yep.
is very top of mind for us. And
Oh, interesting.
yeah, stay tuned. There might be
Okay.
an update in an upcoming blog on that one specifically because it's the one we get the most feedback on.
I know because I get it. Like this is why I bring it up is because this is what people ask me. Like, what you can like? I would understand. So okay, interesting. I
So
even
stay
like that you
tuned
said.
on that one.
Wow. Okay. All
And
right.
keep giving us feedback. We listen to it.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
like we are like it is our goal to have parity and give you as much kind of capabilities in the web, like what you're familiar with in desktop. So hearing where the limitations are the biggest blockers for you, like that's important information for us. So
Yeah.
things like not being able to open your incremental refresh models. We are listening to that feedback, and please stay tuned in our blogs for any updates on how that might be improved in the future.
Awesome. Love that. Okay,
Okay.
great. Good to know. I love this. And so these are general limitations. One thing we didn't really go over that is also available to us now is you can also use Power Query in the web to adjust some of your tables. So this is also, was this part of GA? I don't know if this is exactly GA. It feels related, Emily, but I'm not sure if it was. Is this part of it?
Yeah, so that was a big part of GA, and it is actually one of the last big kind of parity gaps that we closed before the GA announcement, because we
Okay.
know and like we see so many people who are editing models are also using Power Query to transform their data. Like that's a really core part of the semantic modeling experience within Power BI. So that was one of the biggest things that we did with the GA, like right before the GA announcement, leading up to the announcement, is support both using Power Query to create net new semantic models in the web and have that rich Power Query editing experience of the models. I think I know where you're going with the next gotcha to be aware of, though, is that is specific to your import tables.
Yes.
Direct query tables do not support Power Query transformation in the web. You can still edit in desktop like you have been able to, but in the web, it's just for your import tables.
Yes. And that's a good call. And I would argue, I mean, I don't know, Tommy, how you've been building models, but I would say the lion's share of every organization, if you've been established, you're going to have a ton of imported tables all across your organization. So the fact that you're able to expose that, I can't tell you the number of times I've needed to make a simple little column addition. I need to make a slight change here or there based in Power Query. And then I didn't want to go all the way down to desktop. So I really do like this ability to be able to jump into the model and then right there inside that experience, use Power Query as needed directly in the web. I think this is huge. I love this feature. I think it's a big win. Tommy and I are huge fans of Power Query.
Oh yeah.
And like that, honestly, the only reason I started getting into Power BI was I found Power Query for Excel and I thought, this is so amazing. And then all of a sudden a visualization program appears with a Power Query attached to it. And I was even more excited to dive in and learn more about this new Power BI program. But my main hook was Power Query. It's so neat. I really love it. Anyways, other features here. Anything else, Emily, that you would say? There's other number of limitations. Both the links are in the chat window in case you want to check out the limitations yourself. Any clear limitations, Emily, you want to just kind of point out here that would just be relevant to call out? I think we talked about one on the pre-call a little bit. I don't remember if we talked about that one or not.
Yeah, so I would say in our documentation, I think looking at the limitations, I think we called out the most important ones to be aware of, but any nuances with Power Query Editor, we actually have a whole section of the documentation about considerations to be aware of with those. And I think one of the biggest things with Power Query Editor is just make sure you have access to the underlying connections of your data sources. Like that's a huge one with doing anything with Power Query Editor. We have a section on unsupported semantic models, which goes over models where you can't edit them in the web. The biggest one there to be aware of is the incremental refresh one that we talked about. And then last, we have a section of other limitations, especially on the remaining gaps that exist between model view and desktop and the service. I think that we've really covered like a lot of the core functionality.
The big ones, yeah.
Yeah, one small one that I think you're kind of hinting at that you heard at the beginning is the Q&A setup dialog from desktop.
That's the one. Yes.
That one is not supported in the web, and as you saw, we are planning to deprecate Q&A setup and Q&A.
Yes.
So with that, it will not be brought to the web just because like
there's no need
it is going to be deprecated soon.
Yeah. So that was in desktop. When you're in desktop, there's like a whole Q&A dialog box that appears and how you set up questions and what data do you show when the Q&A appears. All that's changing. You're going to move all that. That's all going to be Copilot related things. So that makes total sense that you're deprecating it and not bringing that particular feature over to the web. So don't expect to remove your Q&A pieces or get rid of them in the web. You have to still do that in desktop. And also be aware, you got 1 year to remove Q&A visuals from your reports as well. So that's another feature there that you're just going to work through and unpack as well. So love this. This is also extremely amazing. Love this feature. I think this is definitely the right direction. Emily, you have not said it directly, but I'm very positive on the future based on what you have said. You said some really, it's not there today. I love your
I love that.
I love your phrase. It was so on point, so super fun. Really enjoyed that. So that also tells me I'm really happy for the investments that Microsoft is making here. I think this is, again, every time you're making better improvements, you're doing a great job as a PM listening to the community, really pushing out some, I think, very impactful features that are going to really enable removing more barriers for that beginner, intermediate, and even advanced users to be able to use more web-like experiences with the modeling place. You're doing a great job. I love it. This is a great feature. We really wanted to have you on to talk more about this one and this feature. That being said, I think we're about time. We've run out of our Emily needs to get back to bed and take a little quick nap before she has to do real work. We woke her up really early this morning to come talk with us. You did surprisingly well. I didn't even see a single sip of coffee. You were just on
No,
point
I
the whole
haven't.
time. Excellent. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all the hard work your team does. I know a lot of times people complain about things. Oh, it doesn't do this. Oh, it doesn't do that. But I do want to publicly say we really do appreciate all the hard effort. We know the team is listening. We know it's a lot of work. And I can't imagine the amount of headache you have to go through of working with this feature and that's broken. And then we just fixed something new and then it just broke something else. And like there must be so much effort being put into this one. So I just want to acknowledge all the heavy effort you're putting into this one and you're making the product great. You're making great moves and strides with the product. So thank you very much for all the hard effort you put in there. We really do appreciate that. That being said, we love the audience here. Thank you, chat, for saying some things. We've been giving you some articles and some notes here. Thank you very much for participating and saying things in the chat window. All the links you need are there, and there's some additional links in the description of this video as well. And with that being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Do you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast, leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of PowerBI.tips social media channels.
Thank you all, everyone. Thank you, Emily. We appreciate you. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.